Hello everyone, my name is Terry for terrythetutor.com, and today we are going over how to graph an inequality. Um, Really there's only 4 steps. Uh, you have to first graph your boundary line for the inequality. Second, you have to decide if it's a dotted or a solid boundary line, and then you have to interpret whether or not you have to shade above or below, or of course to the left or to the right of your graph. We have a tip for you, because whenever you graph an inequality, the first thing you need to do is get it into a form that you're familiar with so that you can graph it. Meaning you want to bring it from standard form, for example, into slope-intercept form, which we have our first example. This is slope-intercept form, which is very easy to graph, thankfully. So let's get started. We've got y is greater than negative 5x plus 1. Okay. I know that the plus 1 is the y-intercept, so I'm going to go ahead and put my first point as the y-intercept, 0, 1. Next, I'm going to use the slope to determine the next point. I know that slope is rise over run. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run 1 and go down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops, I meant to shade that. Shade. There we go. Okay, now I've got 2 points. Now I've got to graph my boundary line. But before I do that, I need to decide if it's a dotted or a solid line. Whenever you've got an inequality that does not have an or equal to, meaning greater than, well, oops, here's an or equal to, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, those are or equal to's. Here's the one without or equal to, greater than and less than. Okay, it looks like we have a greater than, so we are going to use a dotted line. If you had an equal to, then it would be a solid line, because you're including the values on the line. But in this case, we're not including the values on the line. We're including everything above or below it. We'll decide in a second. Okay, that's a really poorly drawn line, but this is an art class, thankfully. Okay, now what we have to do is we have to decide. Do I shade above, or do I shade below my graph? Well, thankfully it's pretty simple to decide. Whenever it's y is greater than, you shade above. If it's y is less than, you shade below. It looks to me like it's y is greater than, so I'm going to decide, well, where are my y values greater? Are my y values greater above the line or below the line? They're always greater above the line, so you shade above the line. And of course this shading goes on forever. But it's still just a dotted line, because we don't include the values on the line. And that's that. Let's go on to our next example. Let's do this one in green. We're asked to graph the following inequality. And like I said before, the first step to graphing any inequality is getting it into a form that we're already familiar with. Let's go ahead and get it into slope-intercept form. So I've got x plus 2y is less than or equal to 3. Let's solve for y, as we do when we use slope-intercept form. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides, and I get 2y less than or equal to negative x plus 3. Now let's divide both sides by 2 to solve for y. So I get y is less than or equal to negative x over 2 plus 3 over 2. Awesome. So that's our line. These lines are equal. They're just in different forms. They mean the same thing. So I'm going to graph this. I'm going to go ahead and plot my y-intercept. 3 over 2 is about, it's about 1/2, so it's right there. Actually, it's exactly 1.5. And now let's go ahead and use our slope to determine our next point. It's negative x over 2, which can be written, let's go ahead and rewrite this one. Y less than or equal to negative 1/2 x plus 3 over 2. Because there's an imaginary 1 right here. 1x, you guys know. And I can bring the x over. And they'll mean the same thing. Well, I guess what I did was I brought the numbers over, so I brought the x that way. Anyway, negative 1/2 x. So the slope is negative 1/2. So let's do our rise over run. I'm going to rise 1 and go over to the left 2. 1, 2. Okay, that's about my, whoops. Every time I try to make a dot, that's about where my line should be. Now I have to decide. Is it a solid or a dotted line? Well, because it's equal to, like we said before, it's going to be a solid line. So let's go ahead and draw our solid line. There we go. That's not too bad this time. Now let's look and decide. Well, let's put our arrowheads so you know it goes on forever. Now, do I shade above or below this line? Because it is y is less than, I have to decide where my y values are smaller. My y values are smaller below the line, so I'm going to shade below the solid line. And that's our answer. Good job. Let's go on to our third and final example, where we're asked to graph the inequality, y is less than 3. Referring to the information that I gave in our horizontal and vertical lines lesson, we know that, let's say we had the line y equals 3. We know that that graph is something that looks like that, passing through the 3. But because this is y is less than, and there's no equal to sign, we're going to do a dotted line through. And now the only thing to determine is whether or not to shade above or below this line. Well, where are my y values less than 3? They're less than 3 below the line. So we can shade below the line. And that's it. Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to go to terrythetutor.com/ask to ask your very own question and have it featured in this video. Well, not this video, future videos. And it'll be custom made for your question. It can be a specific question that you're having trouble with online, something that is from the homework, anything really. This has been Terry the Tutor, and I'll calc you later.